Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Please note that this AI-generated podcast is intended solely for general learning and educational purposes. While we strive to ensure accuracy, the AI may occasionally produce errors or incomplete information. We strongly encourage you to consult qualified professionals and conduct your own due diligence before making any legal, financial, or business decisions based on the content presented here. Also, if you find this content valuable, we kindly request you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to receive updates on future episodes. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we try to cut through all that informational clutter and hopefully hand you a clearer understanding of some pretty complex subjects.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Staring at a spreadsheet that just looks like, well, a foreign language, or trying to untangle some kind of really naughty personal problem.
Or just dealing with the flood of news headlines and social media takes, all saying different things. It's a lot.
It really is. In a world just drowning in data, how do we actually turn all that raw information into, meaningful insights? How do we make genuinely sound decisions, especially when the stakes feel high?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it really highlights the immense value of the skill we're diving into today, analytical reasoning.
Right.
You can think of it as like your cognitive GPS in this huge landscape of facts and figures. And it's not just for, statisticians or scientists. It's really the quiet engine behind clarity in, well, almost every part of your life.
Absolutely. Analytical reasoning feels like the master key that unlocks understanding. It's the essential skill that helps us untangle all that complexity, solve problems, make genuinely informed choices.
Whether you're a seasoned pro, a student, or just trying to navigate daily life more effectively.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really pull back the curtain on this vital cognitive tool. We're going to break down precisely what analytical reasoning is, explore its many fascinating forms.
It's different flavors, you could say.
Yeah, its flavors. Reveal its critical applications across different fields and, importantly, in your own living room. We want to arm you with practical techniques to sharpen this skill, point out some common pitfalls to watch out for.
And how to sidestep them, hopefully.
Right. And even take a little journey back through its really rich global historical roots. The goal here is to equip you with a crystal clear understanding and, maybe more importantly, some actionable insights so you can become a more discerning, well-informed and effective thinker.
Precisely. It's about moving beyond just having information to really understanding it and, using it.
Okay, so let's start right there, demystifying it. What exactly is analytical reasoning? What's the core idea, the power behind breaking things down?
Well, at its absolute heart, analytical reasoning is the art of dismantling complexity. Imagine you're faced with a sprawling, intricate problem. It could be anything, right? A faulty car engine, maybe a business strategy that's just not working anymore. Instead of being overwhelmed by the whole thing, analytical reasoning is the methodical process of taking that large, complex whole and breaking it down, into smaller, more manageable parts.
Okay.
Once you've got those individual bits, you analyze each one carefully. You look at its properties, its function, how it relates to the other pieces. And this is the really crucial final step. You synthesize them. You bring them back together, often in a new, insightful way, to form a coherent conclusion, or figure out a solution, or just get a deeper understanding of the original problem.
It sounds a bit like being a detective, doesn't it? You don't just walk into a crime scene and bang, declare who did it.
No, definitely not.
You gather individual clues, you examine each one, a footprint here, maybe a discarded object over there, and then you start piecing them together, looking for connections, until the whole story of what happened starts to emerge.
That's a great analogy.
Or, the one we often use, tackling a massive jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
You don't just stare at the box and hope it magically forms itself.
Right. You dump out all the pieces, you start sorting them maybe by edge pieces, by color, by pattern. You look at each individual piece, and then slowly but surely you connect them until the entire picture clicks into place. It really does transform chaos into clarity. That puzzle analogy is spot on. You start with what seems like this overwhelming jumble, but by applying a systematic, granular approach to each little component, the bigger picture doesn't just become clear. It often reveals nuances you might have totally missed otherwise. And this skill, it's foundational. It really underpins nearly every effective decision we make, every problem we solve.
It's easy to see how.
Think about it. Managing your personal finances, trying to choose the right car, from like a million options, or even just critically evaluating the news you see every day. You're using analytical reasoning, maybe without even realizing it. It's not just for labs or boardrooms, it's constant.
And when we talk about deepening the definition, what does that process look like? Because it feels like more than just mechanically taking things apart. It sounds more dynamic than that.
Oh, absolutely, it is. The process aspect is key here. First, it inherently involves logical thinking. That means following a sound, defensible line of reasoning from your starting points, premises, or observations to reach solid conclusions. It's not just being smart, it's about building arguments that actually hold up.
Okay, so logical structure.
Second, it demands critical analysis, which means you don't just swallow information whole. You question it, you examine its validity, you try to spot potential biases both in the source and in your own thinking. You're constantly asking, is this right? Is it relevant? How could this be skewed?
That self-awareness seems crucial.
Definitely. And third, fundamentally, it requires the ability to identify patterns and relationships within all these different pieces of information, seeing how things connect, even when those connections aren't obvious, or maybe they go against what you'd expect, recognizing the underlying structure, the subtle repetitions.
So it's like seeing the intricate threads, weaving everything together, even the hidden ones, and then figuring out how strong those threads are and where they're leading.
Exactly. And the value this brings is just huge. It allows for truly informed choices, not just, guesses or gut reactions. Because you've broken down the problem, understood the parts, analyzed the relationships, your decisions are built on something solid.
Which leads to better problem solving too, presumably.
For sure. It facilitates genuinely effective problem resolution because you're tackling the root causes and all the contributing factors, not just slapping a Band-Aid on the symptoms. And maybe most importantly, it leads to a much clearer, deeper understanding of complex situations. You move beyond just scratching the surface.
Right, you get the real picture.
And you see this reflected professionally, too. Analytical reasoning is consistently one of the most highly valued skills. In data analysis, for example, it's not enough to just collect data. You have to analyze trends, correlations, outliers to get those actionable insights.
Makes sense.
When evaluating options, choosing software, a business partner, whatever analytical reasoning helps you systematically weigh the pros, the cons, the risks, the opportunities.
Yeah, laying it all out clearly.
And for strategic planning, well, you just can't create an effective strategy without meticulously analyzing the market, the competition, customer behavior, your own internal capabilities. You're basically synthesizing huge amounts of data into a coherent plan.
And in academics.
Oh, it massively enhances learning. It improves how you interpret new information, connect it with what you already know, and then apply it to new situations. It's really the difference between just memorizing facts and truly mastering a subject.
That makes so much sense. It really does sound like the bedrock of genuine understanding and effective action. Now, you mentioned earlier it's not just one skill, but more like a toolkit. So let's move to part 2 and explore these many flavors. What are these different types? How do they work?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Analytical reasoning isn't this single monolithic thing. It's really a collection of distinct types, each with its own approach, its own logical structure, and its own best uses. Understanding these helps you pick the right tool for the job.
Okay, so let's start with maybe the most famous one, the one people often learn about first, deductive reasoning.
Right, deduction. Deductive reasoning basically operates on the principle of certainty, if your starting points are true. It starts with general principles or premises, things assumed to be factual or universally accepted. And then, through a series of logical step-by-step inferences, it moves towards a specific conclusion that must be true if those initial premises were correct. The conclusion is essentially already packed inside the premises. You're just unpacking it, making it explicit.
The classic example always pops into my head. All humans are mortal. Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal. If the first two are true.
The third has to be true. Exactly. There's no way around it.
But beyond those simple philosophy examples, how does this show up in the real world?
Oh, it's fundamental and feels like mathematics, where you prove theorems deductively from axioms. In computer science, the logic in algorithms is often deductive. If condition X is met, then action Y must happen.
Oh, okay.
And maybe most visibly, in law. Lawyers constantly apply general laws or statutes to the specific facts of a case. They're trying to deduce a certain outcome.
So they might argue.
They might say, the law states contract requires offer, acceptance, consideration. My client's agreement clearly shows all three. Therefore, my client has a legally binding contract. They're rigorously deducing that specific legal consequence from general legal principles.
Got it. So deductive reasoning gives you certainty, assuming your starting points are solid. But then there's inductive reasoning, which seems like it goes the other way.
It really does take the opposite approach. And induction is how we often learn new things about the world. It begins with specific observations, specific instances or data points, and then it uses those to make general conclusions or broad generalizations. The key difference here is that these conclusions are based on probability, not absolute certainty. The observations make the conclusion likely, maybe highly probable, but not guaranteed.
Like the classic, every swan I've ever seen is white, therefore I conclude all swans are white. It feels right based on your experience.
Well, then you go to Australia and see a black swan, and your generalization collapses.
Exactly.
This is the cornerstone of scientific observation and forming hypotheses. Scientists gather specific data from experiments, observations, and then they use inductive reasoning to infer general principles or patterns. Then they design more experiments to test those ideas. It's a powerful way to generate new knowledge, but it always has that element of probability. You're building from the specific to the general, always open to new evidence.
Okay, that's clear. And then there's abductive reasoning. This one feels a bit trickier, sometimes gets confused with the others.
Abductive reasoning is really interesting. It's about finding the best explanation for a set of observations, especially when you don't have all the information or things are ambiguous. It's not about certainty like deduction or generalizing like induction. It's about inferring the most likely cause or reason for something you're seeing.
So it's like inference to the best explanation.
Exactly.
Like if you wake up, the ground outside is wet.
Yeah.
You know that if it rains, the ground gets wet. So you infer it probably rained overnight. You don't know for sure. Maybe the sprinklers went wild.
Right, or a pipe burst. But rain is usually the simplest, most likely explanation given what you see.
Okay.
That's a perfect everyday example. And this is used heavily in diagnostics. Think about a doctor. They evaluate symptoms, history, test results, and then use abduction to infer the specific illness that best explains all those factors.
Or a mechanic hearing a weird engine noise.
Exactly. They hear the noise, see the warning lights, and infer the most probable mechanical fault. You're working backward from effect to the most plausible cause.
That seems incredibly useful when you're problem solving with incomplete info. Now, critical thinking, that feels like a big umbrella term covering a lot of this.
It really is the meta skill, you could say. Critical thinking is the disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information. Information gathered from observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, communication, whatever. It guides your beliefs and actions.
So it's about evaluating information carefully.
Yes, with a discerning eye. Actively identifying potential biases in the source, and importantly, in your own thinking, and then making well-reasoned, impartial judgments. It's what lets you sift through all the stuff you encounter, daily news, ads, opinions online, and arrive at a balanced view instead of just accepting things. It's the ultimate filter.
Gosh, in today's world with so much misinformation, that sounds more vital than ever.
Absolutely critical.
What about pattern recognition? AI is famous for that, but humans do it constantly too.
We do. Pattern recognition is simply the ability to identify recurring trends, sequences, associations, or relationships within data or observations. This could be numbers, like stock trends, or visual things, like facial expressions, or even behaviors like customer buying habits.
So noticing that, say, a specific marketing campaign always boosts sales on Tuesdays, or recognizing a sequence of musical notes that's typical of a certain composer. Spotting the signal in the noise.
Exactly. It's crucial for data analysis. It's fundamental to machine learning algorithms that learn from examples. And yeah, it applies to recognizing social trends, predicting behavior, even diagnosing diseases from symptom clusters. The tricky part, of course, is telling real patterns apart from just random coincidence or correlation.
Which probably needs other analytical skills like causal reasoning.
Precisely. Which brings us to logical reasoning itself. How does that fit in this toolkit more formally?
Yeah, the formal side.
Logical reasoning, in this more formal sense, uses explicit principles of logic to analyze and solve problems. This means understanding argument structure, identifying logical fallacies, those errors in reasoning that wreck an argument, and being able to construct or deconstruct things like syllogisms.
So it helps you spot flaws.
Yes, flaws in arguments your own or someone else's, in a debate, in an article, even in the logic of code. It leads to more robust conclusions because you're ensuring the very structure of your thinking is sound.
That seems like it goes hand in hand with critical thinking then, ensuring the process is solid. And spatial reasoning, that sounds different, more visual.
It is. Spatial reasoning is exactly that. Understanding, interpreting, manipulating spatial relationships, visualizing objects in 3D, understanding how things fit together in physical space, mental rotation, maps, complex structure.
So trying to assemble that impossible flat pack furniture without the instructions.
Yes, exactly that. Or figuring out how to pack a suitcase efficiently, or navigating a new city without just blindly following GPS.
Right.
It's vital in fields like architecture, engineering, design, obviously. But like you said, it has huge practical uses in everyday tasks where you need to visualize and interact with the physical world.
Okay. Then causal reasoning. Understanding why things happen seems fundamental.
It really is. Causal reasoning is about figuring out cause and effect relationships. It's asking and rigorously answering, why did X happen? Or what will happen if I do Y? It's about establishing that one event, the cause, directly leads to another, the effect.
So if a business sees sales drop suddenly, they use causal reasoning to figure out, was it a new competitor, a change in our marketing, a shift in customer tastes, an economic downturn? They're trying to prove causation, not just spot a correlation.
Perfect example. This is essential for scientific research, obviously isolating causes and effects. It's vital for understanding complex systems, like ecosystems or supply chains, where one change can ripple through everything. And it's fundamental for personal problem solving. You can't fix a recurring issue unless you know its root cause. Without it, we just see stuff happening without understanding why.
We couldn't really learn or predict reliably.
Exactly.
And decision-making. That feels like the end game for a lot of this analysis, right? The practical payoff.
It really is the ultimate application, the culmination. Decision-making is the direct, intentional use of all these analytical skills to evaluate options, weigh pros and cons, assess risks and rewards, and ultimately choose the best course of action. It's where insight turns into action.
Crucial in business, management.
Absolutely. Business strategy, public policy, and definitely in your personal life, big choices like career moves, investments, family stuff. It's where analysis meets action.
And finally, the scientific method. You said it's not a type of reasoning itself, but it seems to bundle a lot of them together.
That's right. The scientific method isn't a discrete reasoning type, but rather a highly formalized, systematic approach that basically encapsulates and integrates many of these types within a structured process. Observation, hypothesis formation, often using induction or abduction, designing experiments, analyzing data, using pattern recognition, logical and causal reasoning, and then drawing conclusions based on evidence, often deductively testing the hypothesis. It's a formal, repeating way to use analytical reasoning to build reliable knowledge and challenge assumptions.
Wow, that's an incredible toolkit. So many ways to tackle a problem. Now let's get practical in part 3. Sharpening your analytical tools. Because this isn't just something you're born with, right? You can actually get better at it.
Absolutely not innate. And this is maybe the most crucial point for everyone listening. Analytical reasoning is not some fixed trait you either have or don't. It's a highly developable skill, just like a muscle. With deliberate effort, consistent practice, using specific techniques, you can significantly improve your analytical abilities.
That's really empowering. It means you can actively become a sharper thinker.
Totally. You have agency here.
So how do we actually do that? What are the key techniques? Where does someone even start? Especially if they're facing a problem that just feels like a huge, tangled mess.
Okay, the absolute first step, and it's amazing how often people skip this, even pros, is understanding the question. Before you even start analyzing, you have to meticulously read, reread, and fully grasp the problem or the prompt. What exactly is being asked? What are the constraints? What's given? What's assumed?
Because if you misunderstand the question,
you end up spending tons of energy solving the wrong problem. It's a total waste of effort, leads to irrelevant answers. So take the time. Clarify. Rephrase it in your own words. Make sure you got it right.
that makes perfect sense. Setting off without checking the destination, you'll just get lost, no matter how good your map is. Okay, step 1. Understand the question. What's next?
Next crucial step, identifying key information. We're often drowning in data today, right? Some relevant, a lot just noise. This step is about actively separating that signal from the noise. You need to pull out the most important details, the relevant facts, the critical conditions. Look for relationships that guide your analysis. Filter out the fluff, the irrelevant anecdotes.
So if I'm choosing a laptop, I focus on my budget. The processing power I need for my tasks, software compatibility, not the flashy color or extra USB ports I'll never use. Prioritize what actually matters.
Exactly. Then a super effective technique, especially if you're a visual thinker, is visualizing information. Our brains are often amazing at processing visual data, spotting connections that just stay hidden in text.
Like drawing it out.
Yeah. Externalize your thoughts. Use diagrams, flowcharts, mind maps, tables, even simple sketches. If it's a complex process, map it out with a flowchart. Comparing overlapping things. Use a Venn diagram. It helps you understand complex relationships, see gaps, spot patterns much more clearly than just trying to juggle it all in your head. Makes the abstract concrete.
I find that so helpful. It makes a big, intimidating problem suddenly seem less overwhelming when you can see the parts.
Which leads perfectly to the next technique. Breaking down complex problems. The classic divide and conquer strategy. If a problem feels too huge, too intractable, it's often because you're trying to swallow it whole. Instead, systematically divide it. Break it into smaller, more manageable sub-problems or components. Tackle each part individually, and then put the results back together to solve the whole thing. It makes mountains climbable, often reveals an elegant solution through those smaller steps. That's incredibly empowering. It changes, I can't possibly do this, into, okay, I can do this small part and then the next one. What about actually working through those smaller bits? How do you stay accurate? That brings us to working systematically. This means approaching things step by step. Follow a clear, logical progression. Don't jump around, don't make random guesses, don't rush to conclusions. A systematic approach ensures you consider everything relevant, cuts down on errors, increases accuracy.
And lets you backtrack if needed.
Exactly. You can easily retrace your steps if you need to review or find a mistake. It's about discipline and being thorough.
So no skipping steps just because you think you see the answer. The process matters.
Precisely. And of course, driving all of this is using logic and deduction. This is where you consciously apply those different logical principles we talk about. Deduction for certainty, induction for generalizing, abduction for the best explanation. It's about picking the right logical tool for the job and applying it rigorously to draw sound conclusions from the information you've gathered and analyzed. It's the engine of your analysis.
And I guess, like any muscle, the most crucial part is just doing it, practice.
Absolutely. The single most critical thing for developing analytical reasoning is practice, regularly and consistently. Actively do puzzles, play logical games, Sudoku, chess, crosswords, complex strategy board games. Find analytical exercises or case studies online. Consistent effort, just like training at the gym, leads to real improvement.
The more you flex it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. The sharper your skills become, the more naturally you'll apply them in real-world situations. It builds up over time. Consistent effort yields big returns in mental agility.
It really is like working out your brain. Okay, let's pivot now and talk about where this skill really makes a difference out there. Part 4. Where analytical reasoning shines. Real-world applications. It sounds like it's basically useful everywhere.
It truly is. The skill isn't limited to one area or profession. Its value is incredibly universal, making it essential in pretty much any field that involves solving problems, making decisions, or evaluating things critically.
Let's start with a field like law. How do lawyers use this day to day, especially with all those dense texts and arguments?
Oh, in law, analytical reasoning is absolutely fundamental. Lawyers use it constantly to interpret complex statutes, analyze dense case law and precedents, past court decisions, and build compelling, logically sound arguments for their clients.
So they're breaking down texts.
Constantly breaking down dense legal language into parts, identifying relevant precedents, comparing the facts of the current case to past ones, and then meticulously applying those established legal principles to the specific situation to argue for a particular outcome. It's this continuous cycle of deduction and spotting patterns from tons of previous cases.
So a lawyer digging through a long contract to figure out if it's legal, what the risks are. That's analytical reasoning right there. They're not just reading, they're dissecting clauses, checking against laws, finding loopholes or conflicts.
Exactly. Or think about medicine. The application there can literally be life-saving.
Diagnosing diseases must be a prime example, right?
Absolutely essential for diagnosis. Doctors evaluate multiple factors all at once: symptoms, medical history, test results. They look at the patient's complaints, family history, lifestyle, blood work, imaging scans.
All these different data points.
Right. And then they use a mix of pattern recognition to spot familiar disease profiles, abductive reasoning to infer the most likely condition explaining all those symptoms, and deductive reasoning to systematically rule out other possibilities. They narrow it down until they arrive at the most accurate diagnosis. It's a high-stakes analytical puzzle.
So a doctor sees fever, cough, fatigue, looks at lab results with high inflammation markers, and puts it all together to diagnose a specific infection or maybe an autoimmune issue. That's taking disparate clues to a conclusion.
A perfect example and incredibly impactful. In the business world, it's just as vital for success.
I can imagine. Things like strategic planning, market analysis, optimizing how things run. Impossible without it.
Totally impossible. Business leaders use analytical reasoning to assess market trends, spot opportunities, analyze competitors, streamline operations for efficiency, and make informed strategic decisions that hopefully lead to growth.
How might they use different types?
Well, they might use inductive reasoning to spot emerging customer behavior from sales data, then apply deductive reasoning to plan how a new marketing campaign should target those behaviors. Or maybe use causal reasoning to figure out why a product launch didn't do well and then adjust the strategy. It's all about turning raw data into actionable intelligence.
So a big company analyzing user data, market trends, competitor, moves to not just develop a new product, but predict its success and fine-tune the launch. That's putting all these reasoning types to work.
Yes, exactly. And technology is another huge area. It's the bedrock there.
For debugging code and designing algorithms, I bet.
Spot on. In tech, analytical reasoning is used every single day for debugging complex software, solving tricky programming problems, designing efficient algorithms that power everything from search engines to self-driving cars.
So when a developer finds a bug,
They have to systematically analyze the code's flow, trace the logic, pinpoint where the flaw in reasoning or execution is, and then figure out a precise fix. It's this constant loop. Hypothesize, test, refine requires extreme precision.
like a developer finding a subtle memory leak in a huge application by painstakingly tracing execution paths and resource use. Classic analytical problem solving. And beyond work, it's just part of everyday life too, isn't it? Even if we don't label it.
Oh, absolutely. From simple daily choices to huge life decisions, analytical reasoning is always involved. Budgeting your money, planning a complicated trip, evaluating big choices like buying versus renting or which career path to take. It helps you make informed decisions about pretty much anything, making sure your choices are deliberate and well considered, not just impulsive or based on bad assumptions.
It's amazing how pervasive it is when you start looking for it. But, okay, even with great techniques and knowing the applications, people still mess up. Part 5. Navigating the minefield common pitfalls and how to avoid them. Because even the best analysis can go wrong.
That's a really crucial point. Awareness of these cognitive traps is just as important as knowing the techniques. Even skilled thinkers fall into common reasoning errors. Knowing the pitfalls is the first step to avoiding them helps you self-correct.
Let's start with one that seems everywhere today. Confirmation bias.
Oh, confirmation bias is insidious. It's that tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms what you already believe or your initial hunch. And at the same time, you unconsciously ignore or downplay evidence that contradicts it.
Why do we do that?
It's a cognitive shortcut. It makes us feel consistent, maybe even smarter, by reinforcing what we think. But it creates huge blind spots and leads to really flawed conclusions. Our brains just prefer consistency.
So if you already think a certain policy is bad, you'll automatically click on articles that agree with you and maybe dismiss well-argued counterpoints as biased without really engaging.
Exactly. Or if you think a stock will soar, you only focus on positive reports and ignore the warnings. To avoid it, you have to actively, deliberately seek out opposing views. Look for evidence that contradicts you. Practice critical self-reflection, admit your own biases, and genuinely consider alternatives not just to shoot them down, but to understand their merit. It requires some intellectual humility.
That's tough but necessary. And then there are logical fallacies and those errors in reasoning that just seem to pop up everywhere.
They do. Logical fallacies are flaws in the structure of an argument that make it unsound. Even if the conclusion feels right or sounds convincing, they undermine the logical validity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A common one is affirming the consequent. We touched on it. If it's raining, the ground is wet. The ground is wet, therefore it must be raining. The flaw is obvious. The ground could be wet for other reasons, like sprinklers.
Right.
Or the straw man fallacy, misrepresenting your opponent's argument to make it easier to attack instead of tackling their actual point. Or ad hominem, attacking the person, not their argument.
So just because someone is annoying doesn't mean their point is automatically wrong.
Correct. The argument stands or falls on its own logic. To avoid fallacies, you really need to learn to recognize the common types. Understanding their structure helps you spot them in your own thinking and in what others present. Build that internal fallacy detector.
Good advice. What about overgeneralization? Sounds like jumping to conclusions based on too little evidence.
That's exactly it. Overgeneralization is drawing sweeping conclusions from limited, insufficient, or unrepresentative data, making universal statements based on just a few incidents or a biased sample. It's another mental shortcut to simplify things, but it sacrifices accuracy.
Like saying, I had one bad meal at that restaurant, so all their food must be terrible.
Precisely. Or, I met two rude people from City X, therefore everyone in City X is rude. To avoid it, always ask, do I have enough evidence? Is my sample representative? Am I making a huge leap based on an outlier?
Check your data, basically. And then there's just plain hasty conclusions. Seems related, but maybe slightly different.
It is. Hasty conclusions involve forming an opinion or making a decision without doing the thorough analysis, without enough research or information. It's letting impatience or emotion override the need for careful thought. It's the opposite of being systematic.
Like making a snap decision on a big purchase based on just one exciting ad, without checking reviews or comparing options.
Yes. To prevent this, cultivate patience. Stick to a systematic approach. Resist that urge to decide before you've considered all the relevant info. Give the problem the time it needs. Don't let pressure or impatience rush you.
Good reminder. And finally, ignoring context. That seems like a huge one, because data rarely means anything on its own.
It is huge, maybe one of the most dangerous pitfalls. Ignoring context means failing to consider the broader factors, the background, the specific circumstances around a piece of data or an event. Data points almost never exist in a vacuum. Their meaning often depends entirely on the context. A fact ripped out of context can be totally misleading.
So, seeing a company's stock price drop 10% looks bad, but if you ignore that the entire market dropped 5% that day due to some major event, you're missing crucial context that changes the story.
Exactly. Or reading a crime statistic for a city without considering demographic changes, economic conditions, or how crimes are reported, you could draw a completely wrong conclusion. To avoid this, always try to understand the full picture. Ask, what else is going on? What's the background here? Who's providing this info and why? Context can completely flip the meaning of information.
These pitfalls really are landmines. So important to be aware of them. Okay, now for part 6, let's take a step back. Analytical thought isn't new, is it? Feels like humans have been wrestling with this forever.
Oh, far from new. And this is really important. Analytical reasoning isn't some modern Western invention. It's a fundamental human pursuit with incredibly deep roots, stretching across centuries and diverse cultures all over the globe. Looking at its history shows its timeless importance and how different civilizations contributed.
So where do we see the earliest formal systems?
Well, remarkably sophisticated early studies pop up in ancient China, particularly with the Mohist school around the 5th to 3rd centuries BCE. Followers of Mozi engaged in really rigorous debates, focusing on correct inference and avoiding fallacies. They developed one of the world's earliest formal logical systems, outlining principles for reasoning. Their detailed canons show this deep interest in precise language and valid arguments.
That's fascinating. Independent development. And of course, ancient Greece looms large here.
Absolutely monumental, especially Aristotle in the 4th century BCE. He's often credited with formalizing deductive reasoning with his system of syllogisms. His work, the Organon, gave a structured way to analyze arguments and draw necessary conclusions. It profoundly influenced Western thought for millennia, providing foundations for logic, science, even law. His ideas on argument structure and validity are still studied today.
And the thread didn't stop there. It continued through the medieval period.
Yes, and importantly, through different cultures. During the medieval period, especially in the Islamic Golden Age, there were huge advancements. Thinkers like Avicenna, Ibn Sina, a Persian polymath around the 10th, 11th centuries, made massive contributions. He and others built on and refined Aristotelian logic, integrating it with philosophy, theology, science. They introduced new concepts, expanded understanding, ensuring these logical ideas were preserved, developed, and exchanged across cultures when Europe was, frankly, less focused on it.
It really highlights the global nature of this quest for clear thinking. And we shouldn't forget the rich logical traditions in ancient India as well.
Absolutely not. Ancient Indian philosophy, particularly schools like Nyaya and Vaisheshika, developed these incredibly sophisticated systems of logic and epistemology, focusing heavily on inference, anumana, and the means of valid knowledge, prama. They had detailed theories about perception, comparison, testimony, and especially inference, including analyzing syllogistic structures and identifying fallacies, often in parallel with and sometimes predating developments elsewhere. Their contributions were foundational to centuries of philosophical debate within India.
So truly a global effort. How did things shift in the modern period?
The modern period, especially the 19th century, saw a revolutionary change. Mathematicians like George Boole brought mathematical methods and symbols into logic. This transformed it from mainly philosophy into a more formal, abstract mathematical discipline. It was critical, laying groundwork for computational logic, showing how logical operations could be represented and manipulated systematically, like math, a direct precursor to the digital age.
Which leads right into contemporary logic and its impact today.
Exactly. The 20th century saw explosive progress in mathematical logic, hugely impacting computer science and AI. Figures like Bertrand Russell and Kurt Gödel made groundbreaking contributions on formal systems, computability, the limits of logic itself. Their work underpins modern computing, programming languages, AI theory. It shows this continuous evolution from ancient philosophy to the tech, shaping our lives today.
So this historical sweep really shows that the hunt for clear logical thought is this shared ongoing human project. It's been cultivated across civilizations east and west, from ancient China and India, Greece, the Islamic world, right up to modern science. The analytical tools we use today are built on centuries of collective human intelligence, a truly global legacy.
It's a powerful testament to that enduring human drive to understand, explain, and, well, make sense of the world. Analytical reasoning is the engine behind that.
This has been an incredibly illuminating deep dive. We've covered so much, from defining analytical reasoning, that puzzle analogy turning chaos into clarity, to exploring all those different types: deductive certainty, inductive probability, abductive best guessing.
And critical thinking as the umbrella.
Right. We armed you with practical techniques, the absolute need to understand the question first, the power of visualizing, the systematic approach to breaking things down.
And we definitely tackled the challenges, those pitfalls like confirmation bias, logical fallacies, and why context is just so critical. Plus that fascinating historical journey, seeing these ideas develop across cultures and centuries, ancient China, India, Greece, the Islamic Golden Age, right up to modern logic and AI.
The huge value of analytical reasoning really boils down to this. It helps you move beyond just having information to truly understanding it. It makes you a more effective decision maker, a better problem solver, a more discerning person in your life, whatever challenges you face. It really is a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it deliberately.
And as we've stressed, it's not innate, it's developed through practice. So as you go about your week, here's a thought to chew on. What's one analytical puzzle or challenge in your own life, maybe something you've been putting off or feel stuck on, that you could tackle differently now using some of these insights? How could you actively practice breaking it down, analyzing the parts, maybe synthesizing a new approach?
And if you're keen to go deeper and continue this honestly incredibly rewarding journey, we really recommend checking out books like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, fantastic, on how our minds work analytically and intuitively. Or maybe A Concise Introduction to Logic by Patrick J. Hurley for more on formal logic and fallacies.
Yeah, and there are great online platforms too, like Geeks for Geeks, that have specific analytical reasoning, practice, questions, and exercise if you want to really drill down.
The journey of understanding and improving this skill is definitely ongoing, it's lifelong, but it's incredibly worthwhile.
Keep thinking critically, keep questioning.
And keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.